It's a joke, we never win. Both sides got their masks on tight. Truth's a ghost in the dead of night. Falling in this circus stall, like for crowd who's seen it all. In a world that's upside down, the beautiful dumpster fires down.
Hey guys, well, it has been a busy morning over at the White House. President Joe Biden has used the Washington Post to lay out his plan to reform the Supreme Court, focusing on possibly limiting the powers of the incoming administration should it not be his. This definitely does seem like a power play. It seems like an overreach. And I will say that the time to have done this, if you were really fighting for Supreme Court reform, whichever way you wanted it, you had in the first 2 years of his presidency, he had both the House and the Senate and the White House. They could have done and pushed these reforms without it being an executive order. But this looks to me like a lame duck president who was forced to leave, campaigning because he was unfit, wanting to desperately have a legacy to cling on to. That is maybe the one biggest downfall of the Biden-Harris administration is that most normal people on the streets could not tell you one good thing that this administration has done for them. And reality, and then what we're told on the media is so different. But let's see what President Biden would like to do to the Supreme Court. President Biden formally unveiled his planned overhaul of the Supreme Court on Monday with clear eye on limiting the powers of former President Donald Trump should he succeed him. Now, I did pick this article from the New York or the New York Post. Now, if I'd gone to the New York Times, it would probably be much more glowing of President Biden. New York Post tends to be a little bit more conservative-ish, whereas the New York Times tends to be more left-leaning. And I typically go to both. This just had some graphics on it that I wanted to pick. But if you are new to getting into the political scene, you're like, Mo, I'm not really political, but you have this new channel. What should I read? Read everything. It is interesting to see how both sides shade articles and facts to get, the information that they believe is important out. And you as, a strong thinking person have to be able to kind of suss that out. And you do get used to it after a while. You do kind of tell. So this one is obviously going to be a little bit more pro-conservative-ish and see this as an overreach of power, which I generally do. But the Times one does also have some points too. So I encourage you to read everything and try to be balanced in your reading, regardless of what side you're on. The commander-in-chief took the unusual step of unveiling his major planned policy steps in a newspaper op-ed, with the Washington Post helpfully telling readers the writer is the President of the United States. I have my very big doubts on that, and I'm not a full tinfoil Dale Gribble as much as I joke, but this is very reminiscent of a Woodrow Wilson, late stage presidency where it is more than likely that his wife was running the presidency. I think we can all take our blinders off now and really ask the question of, is this man running this, or who actually wrote these ideas? He just does not seem capable of doing that anymore. And that's sad. I wish he would just take time off and spend with his grandchildren, but let's continue. The president laid out three major changes to the court, which he said is mired in a crisis of ethics, including term limits and a binding code of conduct. However, the main focus of the court's recent decision to grant Trump broad immunity for any crimes committed in office. The nation was founded on the simple yet profound principle: no one is above the law, not the President of the United States, not a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States, no one, Biden wrote. But the Supreme Court's 3-6 decision on July 1st to grant presidents broad immunity from prosecution for crimes they commit in office means there are virtually no limits on what the president can do. absolutely untrue. A president can be found, it's a process. You have to go through the House is the jury basically, and they will, say yay or nay. They're like the grand jury. They look at all the facts and they say, okay, he did, commit a great crime or misdemeanor. Then it goes to the Senate, who then, gets to vote on it. There are procedures. The president cannot, he doesn't have immunity. No, you still have the ability to impeach any president or official. That's not what this is happening. Making it clear he was alarmed that at Trump returning to office, he wrote, quote, "If a future president incites a violent mob to storm the Capitol and stop the peaceful transfer of power like we saw on January 6, 2021, there may be no legal consequences." In addition, his so-called "no one is above the law" amendment, Biden proposes term limits for Supreme Court justices, advocating that a president be able to appoint new justices every 2 years to spend 18 years active service on the high court. Interesting. It was only when the Supreme Court, stopped, got more conservatives than, liberal people, that we started thinking, oh my gosh, we need more people. We need more rules. We need more this and that. It's amazing that this was not brought up until it looks like you guys are losing. I don't like that. It looks, for people that can see through things, this looks like a blatant power grab, a blatant, well, we can't get this the normal way. We can't get this the right way, you know, so we're going to change the rules so we can get it our way. Biden also called for a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court, writing that the court's current voluntary ethics code is weak and self-enforced. Quote, "Justices should be required to disclose gifts, refrain from public political activity, and recuse themselves from cases in which they or their spouses have financial or other conflicts of interest. Every other federal judge is bound by an enforceable code of conduct. There is no reason for the Supreme Court to be exempt," he wrote. I'd be fine with that. Let's, if you want a standard codified code of conduct, let's do that. But let's not play, we found something out about Clarence Thomas and his wife, and now we would like to punish just him. I mean, that is, again, these are things that could have been done and not seem like a political move in the first little bit. It would have seemed blatantly political, but not blatantly political by an administration that is deeply unpopular and, is tired of not winning because the Supreme Court keeps saying that a lot of the things they're trying to push through, such as college repayment, you know, race-based farm loan, things, are unconstitutional. This is an absolute power grab, in my opinion. You don't have to agree with me, but this looks sus, and it looks sus as heck. And for a guy who can't really even remember anything half the time, these aren't his thoughts. I mean, again, America wants to know who the president is right now, currently, because we all are aware that President Joe Biden has something wrong with him. Now, the mask has been lifted to the great many of sleeping normies, but we have been saying this for years. Who's in charge? Who's in charge, and what is going on? I doubt that this will get any sort of big coverage, but this is, again, that erosion of separate entities. These are supposed to be separate but equal branches of our government, and now you have tentacles from each of these branches trying to infiltrate the other to make a mega government, I guess. But it's wrong, and I think that some of these things can be done without an executive order, and it wouldn't look like an overreach. But right now, what it looks like is a blatant overreach because they're afraid that they're not going to win. Those are my thoughts. I'm Politically Mo, a channel for the politically, jaded, homeless, mo-less. We don't know where to go. We have thoughts, but they're maybe not, the greatest. And the best way we can do is just get out there, say what we think, but don't think that people on the other side have bad morals. At least that's what I do. I found it works for me, but this is my first foray into politics, so maybe it'll go fine, or maybe it'll be just another normal day when you try to say anything political on the internet and you get blowback from both sides. I'm not quite sure, but it's something new I'm trying, and I love to talk about politics. So there you go. I'm politically Mo, just a sort of politically homeless person covering the news with political jaded eyeglasses on and some wit and humor, but not so much F's to give anymore. Bye, guys.